Please be seated. The gospel, of course, is one of those things that we all know, we all love. We can tell what's coming next. And I absolutely love it. But having said that, this is Labor Day weekend. And I don't think there is a better reading for Labor Day than Exodus 3, 1 to 15. And let me explain that to you. Not only does God state who God is, but God states who we are in relation to God. And if I have two favorite passages, and one is John 1 in the Gospel of John. It is absolutely magnificent, probably the best prose ever written in the history of the world. It's beautiful. My next absolute favorite is this one, Exodus 3, 1 to 15. It's all right there. And if we only had those two passages, I think we could pass the faith on very nicely. So looking at Labor Day, Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian. Well, first of all, Moses keeping a flock is not even a lateral move for a prince of Egypt. It's definitely a demotion. Can you just imagine what that was like? One day you're prince of Egypt, next day you're out in the wilderness. And nobody knows who you are, where you are. It doesn't matter to them. You're nothing. But it worked out well for Moses, God bless him. He probably liked the lower stress of being a shepherd, but he was there in Midian because he was an escaped murderer. He had very good reason, I think, but nonetheless, there he was. And he is working for his father-in-law. He's in the wilderness. If you've never been in wilderness, real wilderness, you might not realize the wilderness not only doesn't give you anything, it takes whatever you have, especially the moisture out of your skin, but it's tough stuff. It really is. So here he is, much humbled, Prince of Egypt, and a voice speaks to him out of a burning bush. That'll get your attention, but a voice speaks to him out of the burning bush. And the voice tells him, take off your shoes, this is hollow ground. And so what does that mean to us? And what I want to make the point absolutely clear, this is not history. This is not history. We know that refugees, the riffraff of society in Egypt, a group of people left about 1290 BC. That's all we know, that we can really put a pin in that and say, yeah, that happened. Did all of this happen? We don't know. But like the Native Americans will tell you, I don't know if it happened this way, but I know the story is true. So think about that. That's a faith history. I don't know if it happened this way, but I know the story is true. The story is true. And you might ask, well, is it just in the past that these great things happened? Well, no. I mean, it sounds like it should. If it's going to be a great thing, it should sound like that. But no, we live through these things every day, absolutely every day. We walk on hallowed ground every day, but we don't give ourselves credit for it. That's the problem. We just don't give ourselves credit for it. And then God says, I have heard the misery of my people. I have heard this misery. I don't know what took God so long, but nonetheless, I have heard the misery of my people. And God doesn't say, I'm going to run out and take care of it. No, he says, I'm sending you. Sending you. Ergo, the Labor Day sermon. I'm sending you. So I want to share a story, in fact, two stories, that I've participated in even as just a viewer in some ways. But I think they both fit this reading beautifully. First of them is one morning I was in my vacation house in Western New York. And I went past this diner to go to get some breakfast. And I thought, oh, God, that place is such an eyesore. I don't want to go there. And it just looked kind of run down, and the cars look run down out in front. I wanted to go into the nearest village, which is a little bit more upscale. And they have a restaurant there that everybody goes to breakfast in. So I pull into the parking lot, and there's these, high-end late model cars. Most of the men are wearing the Martha's Vineyard belts, and, so you get the whole picture with this one. But the line was like out the door, and I was exhausted, and I was hungry. So I thought, oh, God. I went back to this other diner that is just awful. And I went inside, not expecting a whole lot, but, just something to eat. I walked in the door. Now, the waitress saw me because I was different. I didn't, I was not a regular. The waitress saw me, and she saw that I was moving into the first booth there very nicely. And she rushed over and she moved me away from that booth and into a table in the midsection. Don't you hate it when people put you in a table in the midsection? Especially if you're alone, and it's just awful. But she sat me down there. And have you ever noticed with waitresses, she managed not only to pour the coffee, find cream in her apron, put a menu in my hand, take the order like that, and get out of there. It could not have been a minute and a half. It could not have been. So she goes out to put my order in, and I'm noticing now a car is pulling up outside. And it's, I think it was a green Dodge. I mean, how long ago were these things riding around? But this car came in, and a man, older man got out, and he went and helped his wife out. I was assuming it was his wife there. She had oxygen, one of the little portable tanks. She looked just awful. Oh my God, she looked just awful. And the waitress, whose name is Vivian, now I've read her badge, Vivian goes and opens the door for them and shows them into the exact booth I wanted to sit in. But obviously it was their booth, and that's where they sat every morning, and shows them into that. And I watched Vivian moving them toward this booth. Vivian not only looked tired, she looked tired. She looked way back tired. She had her hair pulled into a ponytail, a rather shapeless outfit on her. She was tired. I knew that she was a good deal younger than me, but boy, did she look older. And she got them settled, and she said, I'll be right back. And the usual, even though she brought the menus, I don't know why, they probably ate the same thing every day. She said the usual, and they indicated yes, and off she went. She brought my order to me, and almost at the same time, I'm watching what else is going on in this restaurant. There are 2 state troopers up at the counter. Almost next to me are 2 women. Again, they were probably a good deal younger than me, but boy, they looked older. They looked like they'd had a very, very hard life. And by this time, Vivian is making coffee rounds, and she sits down with this older couple, with the woman with the oxygen. Now, I'm a nurse, so I pick up on a lot of words that, nurses pick up with. And I could hear Vivian saying, Roswell. Well, Roswell is the Cancer Institute in Buffalo. So she wanted to know how everything went at Roswell. And the couple just shook their heads and looked at her. She put her hands on theirs and talked to them. You could almost feel the love that she was able to give them, probably out of a very empty well, a very empty well. She may not have been anything more than a waitress her whole life in places like this. But she held their hands and then went and got whatever they need. As she's doing that, the next thing is she's pulling these 2 state troopers away from the counter and saying, Bob, you shouldn't be sitting like that. You should have a nice, firm chair in back of you. Your back is no good, Bob, and this thing isn't helping you at all. Now, I'm sure the state troopers sat up there at the counter because they didn't want anyone to hear what they were talking about, especially people like me. I have ears like a fox. So, she just moved them out, and she's saying to them the whole way, watch your back, sit in the proper chair, blah, blah, blah. And they are very sheepishly carrying their coffee over to the proper chairs. But there was also a look on their face, she cared. She cared. She remembered that Bob had a problem with his back. So she took care of him in ways that went way beyond a more suitable chair. It was memory. It was locked in. And I'm also listening to this conversation going on with these 2 ladies. From the conversation, I gleaned that they knew each other since high school, and that they met a couple times a week at this diner. At least once a week they got there, is what I was getting. One of them was a caretaker for her husband, had been for years. Looked like things were pretty rough. And they just, you could tell they were each other's support system. The other one had a son who was an addict who was stealing from her. Never sit next to me in a restaurant. I will know your whole life. But I was listening to this and thought, God loved them. Out of nowhere comes Vivian. She pours them more coffee, and she has a plate of pastries, and she said, it's on the house. Now, they broke into smiles that I didn't even know they were capable of, but she cared. She was doing this for them. And I looked at her and I thought, this modest diner is holy ground. And it's holy ground because of her intention. Her intention. She brought love, she brought support to each one of these people, and you can almost hear in the background God saying, I'm sending you, Vivian, that maybe everybody will overlook, but I'm sending you. And the second story was about one of my parishioners who was also head of the altar guild, and I was just terrified of her. In fact, everybody was terrified of her. And I never felt comfortable around her, and she never looked happy. And I realized she had a lot of losses, and she had a hard life. So I understood it when she was sick and she couldn't do a lot of things. And so I wanted to support her in what she could do, but boy, she wasn't easy. And her illness finally put her into a nursing home. And she didn't have a lot of money, so the nursing home was one of these places that's marginal. I mean, just marginal. And work was her outlet, and I didn't know what I was going to find when I went to visit her. And she was lying there. I knew she was miserably sick, and she said, "You know what? I've decided I'm the chaplain for this facility." Really? She decided she was going to be the chaplain for the staff. Now, you've probably all met CNAs, nursing assistants in these facilities. They make horribly small wages. Their work is incredibly hard. They don't get any credit whatsoever, and yet, as a nurse, I can tell you they're the backbone of all of this. As it turned out, she knew every single one of them. They came to her room. She knew who was a caretaker for a husband or a mother. She knew who had a difficult child. She knew whose husband was out of work. She knew all of these things, and she had a prayer list for them. A prayer list. And they knew it. And when Alice died, those people showed up in profound grief because she was the one who stood up for them. She was the one. She was the one who remembered their needs. She was the one that God said, "Alice, I'm sending you. I'm sending you, Alice. I know it's not easy, but I'm sending you to where I need you the most." So my point is, we read Scripture and we think that it has to be exactly that way in order to be important, in order to serve God, and that is so far from the truth. If we are a supportive mother, if we are a supportive neighbor, if we are a teacher who makes a difference. I don't know if any of you have seen the Modelo beer commercial. I usually don't pay a lot of attention to beer commercials, but despite my Irish heritage, I don't. But there's this one thing where a guy is working in like a 7-Eleven, and he's so supportive to the people who come in. That's holy ground. He's the one God sent to that cash register at this time. That's holy ground. And I really didn't look at the hymns I'm sorry, Deborah, I did not look at the hymns that carefully before I came, but I think this line from our first hymn is so important. The last one. Equip us for these daily tasks that help your world endure. That's it. That's everything. Amen.